Hi, I'm Zen and welcome to this video on CSS variables. Here we are going to understand what CSS variables are, how to declare them, and of course, how to use them. We'll be also looking at the two main reasons why you should be using CSS variables. In fact, there's actually three. So let's get into it. Well, before we can use any type of CSS, we really need something to style. So here we have a basic page that I made earlier. It's designed for 1080p, which is why it looks a little bit stumpy on my 4K screen. But why is it in 1080p? Well, it's so that you can follow along. So if that's what you want to do, if you want to follow along, please grab the files from the link in the descriptions below. Just looking at this page, we can see there isn't a whole lot going on. We have a coloured background with 3 columns of lorem text, a title and golden borders. The columns all have their own coloured backgrounds. Well, 2 of them are the same, and this one is different. We've got white text, and in the third column we have this little quote in which the background is the same as the first column. We have an image in the second column, which is just there to take up some space. And finally, we have a set of bullet points in the third column with 1 bullet point, which is emphasized. So let's move on to the HTML. Here we are in the HTML, and we can see that again, there's not a whole lot going on. We can guess, looking at this line 11, that we're using a grid system for the setup, but that's really it. We have a bunch of sections with classes, and that's all that's really in this page. So let us move on to the CSS file and see what goodies we have in there. Again, the CSS file is still fairly basic. You can see at the top here, we have some font definitions. If you don't know how to do this, please check out my Google Fonts video. It's in the card appearing at the top somewhere. My very first card, in fact. In the body, we can see we've got a color being used. In fact, 2 colors being used, one for the background, one for the font color, as well as the font family. In the grid container, well, there's nothing really to see here. There's nothing of any real interest. When we move into the columns, we can see again, we have 2 color rules being applied. Again, column image, nothing interesting there. In the H1 tag, we can see we have a font family being used, and then a color in the first column. Okay, and then we're scrolling down, and in column quote, we can see we have 3 different colors and a font family being defined. And then finally, in the special one, we have another color and another font family definition. That means in total, we have 9 color code references and 4 font references. And this is just for a really simple page. Many websites will have a single CSS file for the entire site. So you can imagine how many variables and colors and fonts that they'll be using in there. Which brings us to the reason number 1 of why we should be using CSS variables. That first reason is consistency. Yep, absolutely true. We shouldn't have more than 5 colors in a website theme or have many fonts going on. But it doesn't mean we won't get our color codes wrong occasionally. This golden color we've got, for example, DAA520, we could always, in a rush, actually put down DDA or DAAA52 or something like that and get a completely different color out there. Where if we're using CSS variables, since they are all referencing the same value, we can be sure that we're going to get consistency because they're all going to have the same value. Okay, time to code. Where you put your variables depends on your project, but it should come after any of the font definitions to ensure that you can use them. But then they should come before anything else, and it should always be inside the root pseudo class to ensure that it works perfectly. Now, CSS variables use the same name value pair system as other variables in other programming languages. In fact, it takes the same syntax as the CSS values do. Okay, so this is the name and this is its value. The only difference is that the variable name must start with 2 hyphens, as they are officially called, but you will probably call them dashes. You can call your CSS variables anything you want, but it's always recommended, of course, to make sure you name them something useful and descriptive. So for this illustration, what we're going to do is create a background color variable. Okay, so we're going to create a variable for this here. And I say it needs to be descriptive, so we're going to call it page color. And it goes a bit like this. Double hyphen, color 80 EC 2. It's not a bit like that, it is exactly like that. This color is actually only used once in the page, which is the definition of the background color. So this is a really good time for us to be able to see how do we actually apply the rule. And this is where I think it goes a little bit excessive in the CSS rules. Okay, but these are the rules and it won't work unless you follow them. So we must start off with the word var, and we use the parentheses, the standard brackets, and inside here we actually put the variable name. So here we can do double hyphen and then page color. And that is all there is to it. So if we save this file and we bring up our page again, we can see it's absolutely no difference, and we can just refresh this here and we can see it stays the same. And to prove that it's working, we can press F12. We can look at the body and we can see that the variable here is working. And in fact, if we click on the computed, we can see how it is there as well. So we can see that it is using the CSS variable. So let's go back to the code and do the same for the font. So once again, this is going to be for the body. So we're going to do double hyphen, we call it body hyphen font, colon, and put in the name of the file or of the font, which is Montserrat. And then once again, we come down here and we just replace it. So we go var bracket, double hyphen, and body font. And again, that's all there is to it. So save it, go back to our page. Let's do a quick refresh and we can see it's all as we expect. So hopefully you understood that nice and easy, because now it's your turn. Your task is quite simple. I want you to go through this page and finish it off. I want you to convert the rest of the colors and the fonts into CSS variables. So you need to pause this video now and press play once again when you have done all the work and want to check your answers. Welcome back, and here are the answers, or at least my answers, because as long as it works, it doesn't really matter. What you should be looking at is, does your site work? And do your variable names make sense? So this is my solution. Yours should be very similar. The one thing that you might see is different is that I have two variables here, border color and accent color, referencing the same color code. And the reason for this is that they are referencing two different types of design elements. We have the borders and the block quotes being one element, and the emphasized bullet point, okay, which was, let's bring it back up. So this emphasized bullet point here being the other element of it. So apart from that, just check yours is more or less the same. Notice I separate the colors to the fonts, and I would perhaps do the same with sizing and stuff like that as well. And then if we just have a look at the rest of the code, so here you can see the updates in the changes here. And finally, can we fill it all in? Yeah, we can get it there, into there as well. Okay. This brings me on to the second reason for using CSS variables, and that is they are all together for easy reference. Since all the variables are in the root, okay, and a root rule is towards the top of your file, or maybe you've even got a separate file, CSS file just for your root data, it makes it really easy for us to find them, change them, and update them. So for instance, I may want to make the borders colors a little bit more of that sort of yellow gold rather than the sort of darker color that we've got. I may want to change this accent to red rather than the same as the borders, and also may not like my title. So how quickly is it to change it? Well, it is as quick as this. Let's go for border color. Let's change that to F. Yeah, let's change this one. And then we save that and we view it, and we can see it's updated straight away. Okay, we've got new titles, the quotes using the same title font, and this is different. Now you may say, okay, with this new font that doesn't work very well, but now you understand the system. It's very quick, very simple. I should note that the variables can be used for anything, including font sizes, for example. Experiment with it and have some fun. Can you think of a really good situation where this might be useful? If so, whack it in the comments below. And whilst you're there, please give this video a like, and why not subscribe while you're at it. It'd really help make this channel grow. Now we move on to the third reason to use CSS variables, and this reason is probably the best. It is why they are even better than SCS variables, and that is you can update them dynamically and easily. I know that some of the advanced coders who are watching this will say, well, you can already update any CSS value with JavaScript anyway. And my answer to you is this. First, I'm honoured that you've come to my video and thought it's worthy enough to watch. And secondly, this is true, but it's a bit messy if we're honest, and you can only update a single rule at a time. Whereas if you have multiple rules which are linked to a single variable, they all get updated at once. To demonstrate this, we have another simple setup where we can update the CSS variable live. And again, all the files are available to download from the link in the description. Here we have our sample file. Okay, we have a simple border with some text inside it. We have a color picker and we have the button. And when we click on the button, we can see it updates. And it doesn't matter what color we use. We can go any color we want. And as we click it, they update. How cool is that? I think it's quite cool. If you don't think it's cool, that's fine. You're absolutely allowed to be wrong. So we think it's cool. How easy is it to do? And the answer is very simple. So first, let us have a look at the HTML. Here's the HTML. Like I said, very straightforward. Links to the style sheet and to the JavaScript. We have a div here, okay, and we've done this so that we've actually got two different elements that have been updated at once, and we have the paragraph with the text in it. So a class of cover for the div and a class of P1 for the paragraph. We then have the color picker with an ID of picker and the button with the ID of change. So let's have a look at the CSS. Again, the CSS file is straightforward. We have the pseudo root class with the primary color variable. We have the rules for the cover and for the P1 where they both reference the variable. So the magic really is in the JavaScript file. And again, this is nice and simple. So here's our JavaScript. You can see we've got the window add event listener for the load. This is just to stop errors from appearing for the JavaScript trying to run before the DOM table has actually been built. And then we have a reference to the button. And then we add the event listener to the button for the clicking. Here we can see we are picking up the value from the picker. Okay, so we're picking up the color there. And then this line here, we are applying it. And when we apply it, because both the cover and the P1 are referencing the same variable, they both get updated. So it's all done in 2 lines. It's nice and easy. In this video, we looked at how to create CSS variables, reference them, update them dynamically, and the 3 reasons why we should use them, which means we have now reached the end of this video. Thank you for staying with me all the way. If there's a video you want me to do, please let me know. If you want to shout out in one of my future videos, ask me in a comment. In fact, feel free to ask me anything in the comments. See you guys next time. This is Zen, signing off.